Colonel Emily Carter walks into a small supermarket on a peaceful weekend afternoon in Austin, Texas, wearing a casual white shirt, blue jeans, and sneakers. She easily blends in with the crowd of ordinary customers. With her humble appearance, no one could have expected that this woman had spent her entire career defending the country, commanding hundreds of soldiers on the battlefield. Emily enjoys quiet moments, picking out essential items by herself after a long, stressful day. But not long after, that peace was broken by a seemingly harmless act that revealed the true nature of a human being. At the end of the aisle, a tall man in a police uniform, Officer Michael Harris, accidentally dropped a packet of noodles and a bottle of soft drink on the floor. Emily paused, watching as Michael glanced at the mess, and then walked away casually, leaving behind the mess he had caused. As a soldier, Emily is trained to pay attention to detail and stay accountable in everything she does. Michael's sloppy actions and indifferent attitude made it impossible for her to remain silent. Emily stepped forward, her voice calm but clear. "I'm sorry, sir, but you just dropped a few things. Maybe you should pick them up so as not to inconvenience others." Instead of apologizing, Michael turned his cold gaze over Emily as if she didn't deserve attention. With a disdainful smile, he replied, "Who do you think you are to tell me what to do? I don't have time to worry about trivial matters." In the face of that arrogant attitude, Emily remained calm. Her eyes lit up with seriousness as she replied, "As a police officer, you have a responsibility to set an example for the community. Picking up your things is not only polite, but also shows respect to everyone." But Emily's words did not make Michael aware of his responsibility. Instead, he was sarcastic, continuing to attack with offensive words. From a small act, the atmosphere in the supermarket had now become tense. The crowd began to pay attention to the confrontation. Emily could clearly feel the curious, shy eyes from all around, but she stood upright, facing Michael's challenge, ready to defend her point of view despite any prejudice or offensive words. Michael Harris glanced at Emily again, his eyes full of contempt. He stood there, tall and complacent, with no intention of following her advice. In her heart, Emily felt a surge of anger, but, with the bravery of a seasoned army officer, she controlled her emotions brilliantly. Her years on the battlefield had taught her that calmness and decisiveness can solve the most stressful situations. She took a deep breath, keeping a calm but no less firm voice. "Sir, this is not just a small matter. You are wearing a police uniform, and everyone here is looking at you. Doing an act as simple as picking up something is not only a citizen's responsibility, but also a way of representing your profession." Her words were a warning, but instead of listening, Michael smirked, a laugh full of mockery and arrogance. "Listen," he said, his voice full of sarcasm. "You seem to think you know a lot about the responsibilities of a policeman, but you don't really know anything. This is not worth worrying about, and to be honest, you should take care of your own affairs." Emily sensed the curious gazes from the people around her. Some people had started pulling out their phones to film the scene, but she didn't let it distract her. In her heart, she was angry, not only at Michael's irresponsibility, but also at the injustice she and many others had suffered. This insult was not just a personal matter. It represented a larger portion of the social prejudices she had fought to overcome throughout her career. Emily remained still, unflinching. Her eyes gleamed with determination as she looked directly at Michael. "You're judging the wrong person," she said, her voice soft but full of power. "You may not realize it, but the way you behave now will have consequences, not only for me, but also for you." Michael smirked, not believing her words. But behind Emily's calm exterior, anger and steadfastness were simmering. She knew that this was not just a small argument, but a moment for her to stand up for herself and the values she had always believed in. In the face of Michael's defiant attitude and insulting words, Emily felt anger rise in her heart, but she did not allow it to overwhelm her calm. Her eyes were cold as she looked directly at him, not flinching in the slightest. Michael still stood there with a sarcastic smile and eyes full of contempt, as if he was waiting for Emily to lose control. But instead of responding with anger, she chose to use the reason and bravery of a seasoned commander. "I'm not here to argue," Emily said, her voice calm but authoritative. "I just want to remind you that your actions not only affect others, but also reflect who you are as a police officer. You should know your responsibilities better than anyone else." Emily's sharp words made the surrounding crowd begin to pay more attention. Some people stopped shopping altogether, stopping to watch the developments. Michael, feeling himself pushed into a mysterious position by the eyes that were falling on him, decided to use arrogance to hide his embarrassment. He laughed, the sound echoing in the small aisle of the supermarket. "Responsibility?" Michael smirked, his voice full of sarcasm. "Who are you that dares to explain to me? Just a mediocre woman. Nothing more, nothing less. Don't think you have the right to stand here and tell me what to do. You don't understand anything about my work." Michael's sexist and racist rhetoric was a powerful blow to Emily's self-esteem. But instead of letting her emotions dominate, she took a deep breath, keeping her eyes steadfast. She knew full well that all her actions at this time could be a testament to the difference between her and Michael. A true leader versus an abuse of power. "I don't need you to understand who I am," Emily replied, her voice calm but weighty. "But I want you to understand that anyone in this society deserves to be treated with respect. And if you can't do that, then you're the one who doesn't deserve the uniform you're wearing." Michael laughed louder, laughing with challenge and contempt. "What do you think you can do to me? I'm a policeman, and the law is on my side, and you're just an ordinary woman of color. You should know your position before you get into trouble yourself." Michael's words were not only an insult, but also a challenge, but Emily didn't flinch. She felt the tense silence that enveloped the entire supermarket. Everyone's eyes were watching her every gesture. This was no longer a personal argument. This was a moment for her to prove that calmness and steadfastness always triumph over arrogance and prejudice. Emily stood upright, her shoulders stiff, as if she were facing an enemy on the battlefield, and not a man in a police uniform. Her eyes lit up with steadfastness, unwavering though Michael's words were full of mockery and insult. The surrounding crowd began to get quieter, as if they were all holding their breath, waiting to see her next move. She took a step forward, not afraid at all. Her voice was calm but sharp as a blade. "You can think of me as anyone, but remember that arrogance and contempt for others do not hide your moral shortcomings. I'm not here to fight for power with you, but I'm not going to let you continue to abuse it." Michael frowned, his confidence beginning to crack at Emily's decisive demeanor. He looked at her, trying to look for a sign of insecurity or fear, but all he saw was a woman as solid as a bronze statue. The crowd was now fully attentive to the confrontation, with some even holding up their phones to record every moment. "Don't be noble in front of me," Michael snarled, trying to regain control of the situation. "You're nothing but a troublemaker. If I want, I can kick you out of here right away." Emily didn't smile, but the corners of her mouth twitched slightly, an expression of a frightening calmness. "If you think your power allows you to behave like that, Then I will let the law answer that you were wrong to think that I would be afraid." The atmosphere in the supermarket was frozen, and the tension increased as two people stood face to face. Michael, with a large and aggressive appearance, faced Emily, a woman who was not tall, did not wear a uniform, but whose demeanor and eyes exuded undeniable authority. "You may continue to insult me, but remember that I'm not here alone," Emily said, her voice calm but weighty. "Here, there are a lot of witnesses, and if you think you can use words to put me down, you're wrong. I am not standing here to defend my personal honor. I stand here to defend the values that I have spent my life preserving." The whole supermarket seemed to be in absolute silence. The crowd, although no one dared to speak, threw their eyes. Emily knew that everyone was on her side. Michael, while still maintaining a tough appearance, could not hide his embarrassment when he realized that the situation was spiraling out of his control. Emily remained steadfast, like a beacon of steadfastness in the midst of a storm of injustice and prejudice. In the face of a tense situation, when Michael began to lose control, Emily remained surprisingly calm under the scrutiny and sometimes fear of the crowd. She understood that her every action and word at this time not only affected herself, but also proved justice and righteousness. Michael took a step forward, his voice becoming harder and more aggressive. "I warn you, don't make the situation worse. I'm the police, and I have the right to deal with you right here." His words rang out, but instead of frightening Emily, it only added to the determination in her. Emily slowly pulled the phone out of her pocket, not in a panic, but in a decisive manner, as if she had planned it in advance. "You have your rights," she said, her voice soft but sharp as steel. "And I have my rights too. Let us see on whose side the law will be." She dialed a number quickly, her voice calm when the call was connected. "Hello, I need support right at the Central Supermarket. There is a police officer who is abusing his power and threatening people. I need the competent staff to come here immediately." Michael was stunned, his eyes wide open when he realized that the situation was no longer out of his control. The crowd began to whisper loudly, and some people stopped recording the video to call the authorities. Emily, despite standing in the midst of chaos, maintained a calm demeanor. "What do you think you're doing?" Michael roared, taking another step towards Emily, but she didn't back down. Her eyes looked directly at him without a hint of fear. "I'm doing what you're supposed to be doing, defending fairness and responsibility," she said, her voice firm but not high-pitched. At that moment, police car sirens sounded outside, signaling that help had arrived. The crowd dispersed to give way as the officers entered. Emily slowly pointed her hand at Michael, her gaze not leaving him. "This is the person you need to consider. All of his actions have been documented and fully witnessed." Michael, who had now lost his arrogance, began to be embarrassed. The confidence on his face disappeared, replaced by confusion and anxiety. Meanwhile, Emily just stood still calm, as if she had anticipated all the developments. She knew that her intelligence and bravery helped her overcome this challenge, not only to protect herself, but also to prove that justice always needs to be done justly. When the supermarket doors opened and Mayor David Thompson walked in, the atmosphere in the already tense space now became even more serious. He appeared with a majestic appearance, his sharp eyes sweeping through the crowd before stopping at Emily. His footsteps were decisive, like a man who came to solve all injustices. Michael, who had been confused before, was now completely stiff. The usual arrogance on his face disappeared, replaced by a look of bewilderment and fear. He bowed his head and stammered, trying to explain. "Mr. Mayor, This is just a misunderstanding. I don't mean anything. It's just that she—" But David didn't let him finish the sentence. "Shut up," he said, his voice quiet but authoritative, interrupting Michael. "I came here because of an urgent call from Colonel Emily Carter, a woman I have great respect for. His behavior has been reported and witnessed by many people. Don't think that your loose justification can erase what you've done." Emily stood still, her eyes not leaving David. She felt a slight relief to know that justice was about to be served, but her expression remained steadfast as a reminder that this struggle was not over. David walked towards her, his eyes softening. "Colonel Carter, I hope you are not injured or harmed in any way. This behavior is unacceptable and will be dealt with thoroughly." Emily nodded, her voice calm but still assertive. "I'm fine, but this isn't just about me. This is about those in power needing to be held accountable for their actions. If I hadn't stood up today, there would have been many others who would have been treated unfairly." David turned to look at Michael, his eyes cold. "You have abused your power, insulted a high-ranking military officer, and lost public trust in the police force. You don't deserve to wear this uniform." A female witness from the crowd stepped up, handing her phone with a video recording of the incident. David glanced at it, and his face became even more serious. "This behavior is intolerable," he declared, then turned to the police officers who had just arrived. "Strip him of his weapons and insignia immediately. An investigation will be opened, and he will be subject to all appropriate punishments." Michael, now completely devastated, was speechless as the officers carried out the mayor's orders. He was stripped of his badge and weapon, his face pale, and his earlier arrogance replaced with shame. The crowd, which had been tense and silent, now erupted into murmurs of approval and relief. Emily, still standing tall, felt a sense of vindication, but also a deep awareness of the systemic issues that had allowed such behavior to occur in the first place. Mayor Thompson turned back to Emily, his expression softening. "Colonel Carter, I want to personally apologize for what you've endured today. Your courage and composure are an example to us all. I assure you, this incident will not be swept under the rug. We will use this as an opportunity to reevaluate and improve our systems to ensure accountability and respect for all citizens." Emily nodded, her voice steady. "Thank you, Mayor Thompson. I appreciate your swift action. But this isn't just about me. It's about ensuring that no one else has to face such disrespect or abuse of power. I hope this serves as a wake-up call for all of us to do better." The crowd, now emboldened, began to clap and cheer, their support for Emily evident. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment, but also a sense of hope. As the officers led Michael away, Emily turned to the people around her. "Thank you all for standing with me today. Change starts with us, and together we can make a difference." With that, the tension in the supermarket began to dissipate. People returned to their shopping, but the atmosphere was different. Lighter, more hopeful. Emily, after a final word with the mayor, walked out of the store, her head held high. She knew the road ahead would still be challenging, but today had proven that even in the face of adversity, standing up for what's right could lead to meaningful change. As she stepped into the warm Texas sunlight, Emily felt a renewed sense of purpose. She had spent her career defending her country on the battlefield, but today she had fought a different kind of battle, one for justice, respect, and equality. And she had won.